Authorities are pursuing to recover assets acquired illegally from flood control projects. The Anti-Money Laundering Council says 5 billion pesos in bank accounts are now frozen as government agencies meet with the Independent Commission on Infrastructure on recovering assets. ICI Chairperson Andres Reyes Jr. said more than imprisoning corrupt officials, the public's money should be returned to the coffers.
Money that should have been utilized to better the lives of Filipinos were instead used by corrupt individuals to buy exotic cars, luxury vacations, and even gamble in casinos. All those persons responsible for this may be prosecuted and jailed. But to completely heal our nation, justice is not enough. We need restitution.
Representatives from each of the agencies have formed a technical working group on restitution who will meet at least once a week. ICI Executive Director Brian Osaka said forfeiture is a civil remedy that can be filed separately from a criminal case.
Well, of course, with what we've been hearing so far, that 5 billion is not comparable to what we've heard so far. Probably as we go along, it's going to be bigger.
Osaka also announced that the Bureau of Customs is set to auction off 13 luxury cars owned by the Discayas due to incomplete documentation. He said, quote, there will be immediate recovery with regard to these cars. As for the 2 luxury cars that dismissed Bulacan Assistant Engineer Bryce Hernandez surrendered to the ICI, Osaka said the commission will still have to check their papers. BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. says it is not only the top 15 contractors of flood control projects that are under investigation by the tax agency. Lumagi told Sa Totoo Lang on 1PH that all firms entering into a joint venture with the top 15 are also under probe.
Lahat po ng mga may government projects na may ka-joint venture po yung top 15 and hiningi na rin po namin yung mga listahan din ng mga sinasabi nilang may mga ghost projects. Ang BIR kasi nagre-rely lang po tayo na dito po sa mga documents na sinubmit po ng mga contractors at saka ng DPWH dahil nag-i-issue sila ng mga certificate of completion.
Meanwhile, DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon said investigators will look into ties between Discaya-linked firms and CLTG Builders, the construction company of Senator Bongo's father. But Go denied yesterday that he is being protected by the Discayas. He maintains he has nothing to do with his family's business. Risk appetites on demand, albeit cautiously, as uncertainty over the corruption investigation prevails. Last week, Philippine Stock Exchange fell below 6,000. The peso climbed to 58 to the dollar, and 10-year bond yields fell below 6%. At the end of this trading week, PSEI is back above 6,000, a peso a touch stronger versus the dollar, and the yield on the 10-year Treasury is under 5.9%. Well, with us now for more on the market state of play, April Litan, the Chief Equity Strategist at COL Financial. Good to see you again, April. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, Cathy. Thank you for having me.
All right, so how are risk appetites holding up? We started this week with bargain hunters pouncing into action, but that's coming from the previous week's drop below 6K on the index, coupled, of course, with a weaker peso and the foreign fund outflows.
Yeah, I think investors are still a bit cautious at this point. I think one of the factors causing them to be cautious is, aside from all this investigation into corruption, of course, is the weak peso. There are concerns that the peso could depreciate even further if the US dollars strengthen. So, I mean, historically, a weak peso has not bode well for the stock market.
Why not?
I think it's for foreign investors because, of course, you don't want to own peso assets and then all of a sudden see the value of the peso depreciate against the dollar. So, I mean, that would mean more losses for you, right? And the foreign investors account for around 50% of value turnover in the Philippines, even to this day. So that would have an impact. on their demand.
So when you compare the unknowns of markets face at the start of this year with the uncertainty of Trump's tariffs, with the unknowns of how the corruption investigation is panning out, which one do you think is the bigger market risk?
Well, I think it's really the global economy. I mean, there are a lot of factors. I think if you look at what's going on globally, one of the major frustrations, even for long-term investors in the Philippines, is that it has severely underperformed global markets. And I would say that one of the reasons why that is the situation is even if you look at the global markets, the movers really are the tech stocks, which unfortunately we do not have any of. So I think that's it. And then maybe if earnings were good as far as corporates are concerned, then some investors would worry less about these other issues. Because if you look at the different members of the Philippine Stock Exchange, you would see pockets of strength depending on the outlook of these stocks. Unfortunately, most of the large caps aren't doing, I mean, it's not that they're not doing well, but their earnings are just not exciting enough to, I guess, attract new money to come in.
But where are those pockets of strength, and what is keeping them from saying, deploying a lot more capex to make it a lot more interesting?
For example, for this year, I think one of the best performing sectors would be the REITs. So it's not that they're not, okay, I would say that they're not deploying capex. It's more like you're seeing a lot of them injecting new assets into the REITs because you can see that the environment is very favorable for them. Interest rates are going down, valuations are better. And these companies are seeing, for example, the office leasing space and the mall space picking up. So because of that, they are expanding their mall footprint and even their office footprint. So they are the sponsors are raising capital by actually injecting these assets into the REITs. So I wouldn't say that there is no capex. I would say maybe more subdued capex because again, it's not an across the board strength as far as the economy is concerned, but there are pockets of strength and these companies are investing. And then of course you have, say for example, Meralco announcing aggressive expansion plans for the next 5 years. And then solar power is also a big thing. So you would also have these renewable energy companies expanding their operations.
Well, to us about the consumer because we're a domestic-led market, as you did point out, in the series of conversations we've had in the previous months when Trump's tariffs were the bigger concern. How is the consumer holding up now against the prospect of an even slower growing economy because the taxes didn't go to where they should have?
Well, consumers are, surprisingly doing better. I mean, even if you look at the BSP Consumer Sentiment Index and the survey, it shows more optimistic consumers because there are more jobs and of course inflation is going down. So it's quite resilient. The problem is if you look at the consumer companies, what they are encountering right now is higher cost of selected commodities. So, for example, you have the manufacturers saying that they're suffering from high palm oil price, coconut oil price, high coffee price, and these are hurting their margins. But if you look at the top line, it's actually still growing strongly. So in that respect, I mean, it's not all bad. But then at the end of the day, if you look at the profits, you have to consider both the top line and, of course, the cost side.
Right, we've heard it straight from the Bangko Sentral governor himself last October 9th. Inflation not much of a concern, but he is keeping a close watch on business sentiment by way of tracking the direction in the stock market as well as the peso. And he's also going to see how our third quarter GDP checks out on November 7th. What are you projecting for monetary policy direction in December and into the first part of next year?
Well, looks like the BSP is inclined to, is more dovish and is inclined to keep on cutting rates. So it already said that from 5%, it expects the Goldilocks interest rate to be more like 4%, implying that the move is to reduce it further in the next few meetings.
What impact would that have on bank stocks, if you will, because we're watching on the net interest margins and also the loan loss provisions, and the bank earnings have started to come out with BPI starting the train there.
Well, it's different. The big banks would be more vulnerable to lower margins, because they have a large pool of low cost deposits. On the other hand, for the smaller banks, the impact on margins is better because they're more dependent on time deposits whose costs have gone up because of the higher interest rates. So the lower interest rates would lead to lower cost, and margins should improve. So it really is mixed.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for looking at the silver linings that lay ahead on the markets. April Litan of COL Financial. And you are watching Money Talks. Coming up, the Finance Department warns of severe impact on government funding should VAT be reduced. And for startup and beyond, we speak with Abad Enriquez of Unleash Philippines. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The Finance Department warns that reducing the value-added tax rate could severely impact government funding for essential operations. The agency said the reduced revenue would limit the government's ability to sustain vital services, including salaries and benefits for state workers. It sees that the projected VAT collection of nearly 1.4 trillion pesos for 2025 would cover only 9 months of payroll and retirement benefits. Finance Undersecretary Carlo Adriano had earlier said reducing VAT would be equivalent to 1% of the country's GDP, or roughly 330 billion pesos per year. He warned that failing to maintain fiscal consolidation could lower the country's credit rating, increase interest costs, and add to overall debt. The Budget Department says the economy can still hit its 5.5% to 6.5% growth target this year, as spending is expected to normalize in the fourth quarter. Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman, who also chairs the DBCC, said GDP growth remains attainable. She noted a temporary slowdown in public infrastructure spending, while agencies like DPWH conduct project reviews. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto earlier said economic growth likely cooled in the third quarter and may remain soft into early 2026 because of heightened scrutiny over anomalous projects. Economy Secretary Arsenio Balisacan earlier said the DBCC will wait for third quarter data on November 7th before revising growth targets, but warned that achieving the full-year growth goal may be more challenging amid slower government spending. Regional banks hit by loan fraud losses weighed on major indexes yesterday, Thursday. Both the Dow and the S&P 500 declined by 0.6%, and the Nasdaq slid by nearly 0.5%. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yields dropped to its lowest end-of-day level in over a year amid credit jitters, settling at 3.976%. While precious metals hit another record high, with gold rising to $4,280 per troy ounce and silver to $53 per troy ounce. U.S. futures point to slight declines when the markets open later tonight Manila time. The Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq are all down by 0.8%. Asian markets tracking Wall Street's losses this Friday. Australia's ASX 200 down nearly 0.7%. Japan's Nikkei 225 slides over 0.5%, and South Korea's Kospi is up by about 1/3%. Let's take a quick check on our own markets here in the Philippines. PSEI opens this Friday higher by about 0.4%, 6,120. The stock market slightly dipped yesterday, Thursday, due to the absence of new catalysts, snapping a 3-session winning streak. The broader all-shares index rose by about 0.1%, with local counters a mixed bag. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today slightly stronger, 58.02 to the dollar. Peso weakened to 58.125 against the greenback on the back of U.S.-China's trade spat. And the 10-year government bond yields posted an uptick of 5.946% from the previous close of 5.942%. And in corporate news, PLDT Inc. through PLDT Enterprise has partnered with Hong Kong-based cloud communications firm Newbuy Group to provide a smart messaging suite for SMEs and e-commerce businesses. Under the agreement, Newbuy's telco SMS platform will power real-time communications, including marketing messages, transaction alerts, and secure access and payment services. The partnership also integrates SIM-based authentication as an alternative to one-time passwords. PLDT says the collaboration aligns with its strategy to support IT and platform businesses by improving efficiency and addressing cybersecurity and regulatory needs. Prices of gold have just more than doubled in a year. For some Filipinos, that means investing in gold is more than a luxury. It is also a way to secure their future. Mon Gualvez reports.
From necklace to ring to bracelet, 59-year-old Jimmy Soriano is virtually wrapped in gold. But he still couldn't get enough of this very valuable possession. He is just one of many Filipinos who now believe gold is a sensible investment these days.
Kapos ka biglaan sa pera. Ano na yan? Kasunahan mo na agad yan. Na pwede mo isanla, pwede mong ibenta.
According to jewelers here in Arranque, the price of gold started to increase again by mid-September. Last year, a gram of gold is just around 3,000 pesos. But now, this price has almost doubled. Because of that, for instance, a necklace with around 12.7 grams of gold bought for 44,000 pesos 5 years ago could now be worth around 70,000 pesos when sold and just a little less if pawned. Richard, a gold seller, attributes the sudden rise in gold prices to geopolitical tensions.
Nakaka-apekto talaga sa pagtaas yung gera sa ibang bansa kasi nag-hoard sila ng ginto. Tsaka possible din yung tariff ni Trump.
That should have been good news, except gold sellers here in Arranque as well as in Ongpin find this as a reason to be even more cautious.
Natatakot kami kasi the more na tumataas yung gold, nangangamba kami kung may bibili pa ba.
Economist John Paulo Rivera confirms that the biggest driver of world gold prices now is the current crisis in the Middle East and the expected downtrend of interest rates in the United States. Rivera also explains that gold is generally considered a safe investment. That's because it's non-renewable, which means that its value does not decrease over time.
Hindi naman abundant ang ginto. So dahil ito ay limitado lamang, hindi lahat ng tao makakakuha ng sapat na dami ng ginto. So dahil doon nag-aagawan tayo sa ginto, tumataas yung presyo.
For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
Our guest today says the biggest challenges facing micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises include access to funding and regulatory burdens. For Startup and Beyond, with us now for more, Abad Enriquez, country lead for Unleash Philippines, a global innovation lab for the Sustainable Development Goals. Good seeing you, Abad. Welcome to the
Happy
program.
to be here. Thank you, Cathy.
All right, so Unleash has finally arrived in the Philippines.
Yes.
And you've joined the Regional Innovation Lab, way back from Singapore, but right now it is in Manila and it happened last month. So how did that go?
It was a lot of fun. So we had 150 innovators from every region of the Philippines. And we had 30 to 40 teams. And from there, they will move on to the prototyping program happening in January of next year until March of 2026.
Talk to us about the ideation process, because that in itself is pretty challenging, because they've had to work on 3 themes, as I understand. It includes health, food, as well as sustainable cities.
That's correct. And what I love about Unleash is that we focus on the problem. We make sure that it's rooted in the community and the users. Meaning when I say users, the people who are affected by the problem, who will be using the solution once it comes to life. And what we see is that a lot of other programs maybe focus on the solution. Maybe not other programs. Like when we think of problem solving, we think of the solution first. We jump into thinking of the solution. But what makes Unleash different is that we really spend time understanding the problem, looking at the root causes of the problem, and making sure that we understand the people who would be addressed by the solution.
As its topic du jour, it's all over the papers, and we've been discussing this ever since the issues come to light. Have there been any ideations towards developing a solution for the flood control system?
You know, I was really expecting a lot, but we've seen one, and it's kind of related to that. It's called Project Safe. And it's kind of like Waze, but it tells you how deep the water is. So you know when you're driving, if you go to an app, they will tell you that there's flood water, but you don't know how deep. So you don't know if it's safe for you to pass by or not. And the idea of Project Safe is that they will tell you using their own technology or someone else's technology that they will install in the Philippines through the LGU network. They will tell you how deep the flood water is and if it's safe for you to drive past.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures there, and they're pretty young bunch,
Yes.
isn't it? And it's across different generations, if I may.
That's correct.
Because it also includes those still in school and those that have just started working. So what sort of demographic are you're working with here for Unleash and trying to develop solutions for, say, the flood control systems?
So we're known for our diversity. So if you are an Unleashed talent, you could be an 18-year-old senior high school student from Cebu working with a professor from Cotabato and a working professional from Baguio, for example. So we have, in our other programs, 18 to 35, but what's unique about the Philippines is that we've accepted everyone, as long as you're at least 18 years old. So we've had maybe 2 or 3% of our talents who are aged 45 to 60. So
it's pretty interesting because as you're also leading this effort, you yourself are a micro-entrepreneur, so
I am.
you do understand the kinds of challenges that they face. And one of the problems really has been and is funding.
that's correct.
So where in the process is funding going to come in, and how are you going to develop that ecosystem to make it robust for these innovators to actually develop good businesses?
That's a great question. And for our program, in the past, a lot of people would ask us, so what happens next? After the lab, what do we do? And for this, we have a clear answer for them. We have a prototyping program where they could test their solution. And as long as they reach TRL 4, which is kind of a jargon, but it means Technology Readiness Level 4, or it is a solution that is tested in a lab environment. And once they have that, we offer pathways to global opportunities like Leaders Innovation Fellowship in the UK, where they get access to not just funding, but also more mentorship.
And that makes it a lot more interesting because when you talk about scaling up, you're going to be working with different nationalities and
That's
different
correct.
cultures. Unleash started in Denmark, as I understand, in 2017, and you've had that experience in Singapore.
Yes, I was a
about
talent in Singapore.
A talent in
Yes.
Singapore. So what next for them? Because that prototyping does begin in the new year, in January. So they've got some time to prepare.
Yes, so for them, after the prototyping program, they can then apply to LIF, or Leaders Innovation Fellowship. For Unleash Philippines, our big dream is for it to be a recurring program in the Philippines. So in the past, we've visited different countries and we moved to a different place from one year to the next. Everyone's so happy with how the Philippines delivered when it comes to the quality of the talents and the partners and the solutions. So now we're looking at delivering the program again year after year with our partners like USC, for example, our hosts. They were very happy with the program. So they said they want to host Unleash again in the Philippines. And of course, our partners from the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK are also quite happy with the results.
So there could be a second year.
That's the dream.
For
The dream is
Unleash.
for Unleash Philippines to be an annual thing.
So you have partnered with the academe, but what about the private sector? What's the way moving forward in helping these innovators scale up, maybe join a big company, or maybe go on their own as micro-entrepreneurs like yourself?
Yes, so for us, the ecosystem is really important. And the reason why we invited 150 talents from all over the Philippines, which is quite impressive because we have partners from say, the most far-flung areas in the Philippines. It's because of our strong network of partners in the Philippines, in both the innovation network, like Kubo, for example, or also in the private sector. Some of our former talents from other versions of, or other iterations of Unleash in the past, were also very helpful in making sure that we deliver this program. For example, Escuelabs is one of the top data analytics school in the Philippines. Orlin Chu, the founder, was an Unleashed talent in Singapore, and because of that, he opened, or according to him, he was so inspired by the program that he ended up opening his own venture here in the Philippines with his partners. So we're hoping to see a lot of that.
And not to forget, there's that huge community to get support from. I mean, it started in Denmark, went around the world, India, Brazil, Singapore is just
Yes.
one. So that's the kind of support that you're providing in that ecosystem for our Filipino talents, as you call them, talents.
Yes, that's correct. So our community is our most valuable, I think, asset, because you could be in other parts of the world. For example, you're in Bangkok and you need help in connecting with someone from the innovation ecosystem. You could go through our website or community platform, look for someone in Bangkok. If you tell them you are from Unleashed, then guaranteed they would support you, because referenceability is very important in business and in life. And if they know that you went through the same program, that you're part of the community, then already there's a connection there.
All right, well, let us know what happens to prototyping. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Abad
having me.
Enriquez of Unleash Philippines. And before we go, catch this new horror movie coming your way soon. The official trailer for Primate has just dropped. The film follows a group of friends on vacation as their trip takes a terrifying turn after meeting Ben, a highly intelligent chimp who treated as part of the family. As tensions rise, Ben's behavior becomes increasingly violent, leading to chaos and survival. Primate hits cinemas in January 2026.
Lucy, bad. Bad. Bad.
You're on the phone. Try recent calls. Yes, it's ringing. Brad, listen to me. We need help.
Oh, you need some help?
Send somebody.
Oh no, bad monkey, but I'm gonna celebrate my Christmas first before I watch that movie. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again Monday, 9:30 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News, all the sides, all the time. Have a great weekend ahead, and I'll see you Monday.